let's do a reading update. I've read a good amount. Like, I've read just about what I usually read over the course of the fall. But for some reason, a lot of them fell flat for me. And I don't exactly know why. I have a couple hunches that I do want to talk about. One standout that was really awesome that I still think about regularly is the first half of Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. That was awesome. I absolutely loved reading that. I was gripped from start to finish. The second half of the book I didn't really love. Like, it's very much written as two standalones that were then bound together. And there were other things I liked about the second half, but that first half really, really did it for me. That was fantastic. Another standout was Spinning by Tilly Walden, which is a graphic novel memoir type of book. It recounts Tilly's experience doing figure skating growing up. Which is just a world I know nothing about and was so cool to see in graphic novel form. I feel like I understand it better now, and the coming of age emotions at play and then put into sort of the pressure cooker of a competitive and artistic environment. Really fascinating and just such a heartfelt story. It's one that I'm going to have to reread to feel like I fully absorb it and appreciate it, because don't get me wrong, I read this fast. Graphic novels go very quick for me, but I do want to return to it and make sure that I fully got it. I read System Collapse by Martha Wells from the Murderbot Diaries, and that one was good. I did really like it. That said, it didn't stand out for me compared to the other Murderbot books. It wasn't the like punchy, awesome experience that I was looking for. Like, it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. I love Murderbot. But at the same time, it just didn't really do it for me. I might have read it at the wrong time. I might not have been exactly in the right headspace for it. Don't exactly know. Other than those three, I think everything else was a little underwhelming. I really, really want to love the Imperial Radic trilogy by Ann Leckie. I think I've just been expecting the wrong things from it, because with Ancillary Justice, I liked it a lot, but it was super slow for me. It took me a long time to get through. But there were tons of redeeming qualities. I did really enjoy it. But with Ancillary Sword, Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Sword, I might have been saying that wrong. But Ancillary Sword was equal amounts of slowness for me, but not as many redeeming qualities. So again, I liked it, but there was just something that didn't catch me. I didn't find myself thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. I don't find myself thinking about it in retrospect now that I've read it. I don't know why it just didn't really do it for me. So I do want to finish the series. I'm gonna read Ancillary Mercy at some point, but I don't know. It might just not be the series for me, which is too bad because I really want it to be. So we'll see. I do plan on finishing that. I'm struggling to even remember what else I read this fall. I'll put things on the screen, screenshots from Storygraph. You know, recently, if you've been on the internet, especially the fantasy side of the internet, you've been hearing about the hype building for Wind and Truth. And it's coming out in just 3 days when I'm recording this. Very close. And everyone has been, it seems like everyone has been rereading the Stormlight archive in preparation for it. I was trying to catch up on the rest of the Cosmere in preparation for it, and that's not going to happen. I got pretty close. I made a good effort, but also I realized that, okay, in order for me to enjoy this to its fullest, I can't be on a timeline with it, and that's something I have to live with, and I'm okay with that. And once I accepted that, I realized that I can, I thought like, okay, ideally, in a perfect world, I would like to also reread the Stormlight archive before I read Wind and Truth. And I thought, why can't it be a perfect world? Why can't I do that? And it was just because I felt the need to read Wind and Truth when it comes out, which is arbitrary. It's gonna be out. I pre-ordered it. I'm gonna have a copy. I can just read it when it's a perfect world for it, So I did start my Stormlight reread, which isn't helping with my series problem. Still reading so many series, I haven't finished very many. But I am rereading The Way of Kings right now, and it is still so good, which I was a little worried about. I think I read this so early in my reading journey that I was afraid that I just didn't get it yet. I was afraid that I loved this because I hadn't read any serious fantasy in a decade or two. But it turns out that it is awesome, and I do have good taste, and it still hits me emotionally very hard, and it's what I needed right now. The lessons that I learned from this are things I'm being reminded of, which just, oh my gosh, it benefited me so much when I first read it, and it's doing that again. But now with 4 more years of life experience under my belt, I'm noticing different things, taking away different lessons, which is exactly what I wanted. So very, very happy about this, and glad that I'm doing the reread. I've got kind of a master plot for finishing some of the series I'm reading while I'm doing a Stormlight reread, which bear with me because I know this sounds like a terrible idea, especially because I have just suffered by making myself read multiple series at once. I need to get away from that. Here's my plan. I'm going to read Way of Kings. I'm going to read 1, maybe 2 standalones that are ideally classics or literary fiction, because I haven't read a single one of either of those in 2024. It's December and I have not done that. So that's my plan. I'm going to try and do a couple standalone literary fiction classics before I pick up Words of Radiance. If I'm feeling it, I'll also do either The Lost Metal, finish off Mistborn Era 2, or Return of the King, finish off Lord of the Rings. One of those, if I'm feeling it. We'll see. I'm trying not to stretch myself too thin. Those are possible. So I'm thinking between each Stormlight book, I'll read 1 or 2 books that aren't related to fantasy or sci-fi, and maybe 1 book that completes a series for me. Because there are like 5 or 6 series where I am just 1 book away from finishing them. So I think that might be a good way to do it. I'll get my Stormlight reread done. I'll finish up some series in the process. Everyone wins. And then I can deal with the other series that I'm not 1 book away from finishing. This sounds like a terrible idea to me, and I don't know a way around it because I don't want to DNF any of these series. I've gone on too many tangents about this exact thing, so I'm going to stop now, but that's my plan. I am loving rereading this, though. It's taken me a long time. I'm this far into it, and I've been doing this reread for almost a month now. So pace-wise, it's not looking great, but I think I'm okay with that. And I know that the last quarter of a Sanderson book flies by for me, so I'm not too stressed. I'm also currently reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and The Language of the Night by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm actually going to go get The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. So this is one I'm just slowly going through. The chapters are super short. It's more of like, it's not like a sit down and read it all in one sitting type of book. It's more like a pick it up, think about it, take it in pieces, which is nice because I don't feel like I'm reading multiple books at once, even though I absolutely am. So, I've just like slowly gone through. I'm taking a couple notes. Really good so far. I think there's some things that I find myself disagreeing with from a philosophical perspective. I think it's making a lot of claims that don't necessarily align with my experience, but the heart of it, I think, is generally true. It's true with a lowercase t. It's not true with a capital T. But I do think there are some good insights in here that I'm glad that I'm getting. I feel like I'm being reminded of a lot of things that I intuitively know. Still really useful in that way. So excited to read more of this. And Language of the Night by Ursula K. Le Guin. I read the introduction by Ken Liu, and then I read the introduction by Ursula K. Le Guin, and now I'm reading the introduction by Susan Wood. There are 3 introductions in this book, and I haven't gotten to an essay yet. So that's kind of put me off from it just a little bit, where I'm like, okay, I am more than ready to read something that's written by Le Guin that isn't an intro. So we'll power through. It's a little bit on the back burner because of the brick. But I'm excited to see what this contains, because it's literary criticism and specific essays specifically on sci-fi and fantasy, and writing, which I feel like a lot of Le Guin's essays are about other topics that don't necessarily have to do with her work, where I guess they all have to do with her work because they are her work. But specifically, like, I'm curious about the philosophy that goes into writing an Earthsea, a Left Hand of Darkness, a Lathe of Heaven, and things like that. I'm curious to make some connections with. I absolutely love the other essay collections I've read by Le Guin, but it's been more of like life essays, like talking about like getting older and her cat and other great topics. But hearing her specifically talk about literature and her place in it and what the experience of writing is like, and musings on art and what it is to be an artist and to be a genre artist. Fascinating. And it's usually been my favorite Le Guin stuff, has been touching on those subjects. Very excited to see what else this one contains. I also actually, today I went to a used bookstore that's super close to where I live, and I just had no idea it was there. I found myself really missing the used bookstores in Syracuse, New York, where I went to school. The shout out to Books End and Books and Melodies, both on James Street in Syracuse. If you're in the area, definitely check those out. I love those places. And I was really missing the atmosphere there, the way that you can just like find your way to the back where the sci-fi and fantasy mass market paperbacks are and just like sink in, and you can walk in with a $20 bill and walk out with 6 or 7 books. Freaking awesome. I love those kinds of stores. And I was like, oh, it's too bad we don't have any of those around here. I just for kicks, I put it into Google Maps to see where the closest one like that would be. It's a 15-minute bike ride from me. So it's in Arlington. It's called The Book Rack, and I went in. It was so cool, and I spent most of the time there in the sci-fi and fantasy section, but I want to go back and see the rest of it. It scratched the itch perfectly, and I got some really cool books. I got a couple Discworld books, and I got a couple Dragon Riders of Pern books by Anne McCaffrey. Let me show you those too. Yeah, so I got these 2 Discworld books with the art by Josh Kirby. I love these. They're wonderful. I just am obsessed with this art style, especially for Discworld. It fits so well. Really, really nice. So I got The Last Continent and Sorcery, I think. Sorcery. Really great. So happy I found these. They were, $3 each. Amazing. They had a really good Anne McCaffrey selection, but I ended up going with, so I got the White Dragon with the Michael Whalen cover. Oh, I'm such a fan of Michael Whalen, so any cover by him is great. I don't have the first 2, so I can't start reading this series yet, but just to have this series and have it in this edition, absolutely great for the collection. Narilka's Story, which is one of the Pern books as well. Renegades of Pern, this one's also a Michael Whalen cover, which this one stands out compared to other Dragon Riders of Pern books, just because the dragons take a back seat, and the front seat is this funky wagon with these funky oxen. So curious to see what that's about. And I'm kind of like piecing this series together patchwork style when I can find these editions that I like. I don't want to, like, they had the first 3 books, but they weren't the good edition. They were like a new one. It's like, what? Why would I don't want those. I want the cool art. So this one, actually, this cover art for Dolphins of Pern, which I just think is so silly. There's someone riding a dragon here, and then someone riding a dolphin right down here. It's just a little, I don't know, it's a little goofy, but in the best way. This art is actually by Rowena Morrill, who is freaking awesome too. I'd been doing some like dark fantasy art type videos on TikTok where I was talking about actual, fantasy artists that dark fantasy AI seems to be pulling from, and just taking a look at the source material, giving some credit where credit's due. And Rowena Morrill came up a lot in the comments, and I ended up doing a video about her, just a broad overview of some of her work. Really cool to see her work in the wild and to have it in a format that I wanted in. I love collecting these books in part for that artwork. So yeah, really, really cool addition here. And then actually I had I was actually in Spain during November, and while I was there, I went to a bookstore called Desperate Literature in Madrid, and they're actually raising money to try and keep their space. There's something going on with the zoning, or the landlord is doing something with it. I forget what the case is, but awesome little bookstore. They had, Spanish, French, English literature, all of it. It was really cool. And it's just like this little hole in the wall where, if you didn't know it was there, you'd never see it. But it was so cozy inside, and the person working there was really nice. The desk took up like half of the front room, to give you a sense of the size of this place. But yeah, I found 2 more of these Discworld books with the Josh Kirby covers. So we got The Light Fantastic and Witches Abroad. So also excited to check these out. And now I have 4 books from Discworld that are in this style. So love that. And now I have a name to put to these, because I didn't know who did this artwork before. So I'm glad I figured this out, because now I can seek them out more intentionally. So yeah, really excited about these. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I had so many books fall flat this month is because, I learned that the sharing, the synthesis, the thought that goes into making a video about books and a video about reading really adds to my enjoyment of the experience. And for a while there, I was like, millions of readers around the world don't do any of this and love reading just as much, if not more, than I do. But I think what I've learned is that I do actually require some level of engagement after the fact in order for it to really sink in and be a super valuable experience. That's not the same for everyone, but I do think that is the case for me. I think sharing it in some capacity, talking about my thoughts, has a drastic positive effect for me. So I'm going to try and keep doing this more, because I want to be engaging with and really squeezing the juice from everything I read and every piece of media I engage with. So stay tuned. All right. Well, thanks so much for sticking around. See ya.